Here. Okay, so the shir, Be'ezat Hashem, is l'refuat shlema of Mazal Bat Lisa. She's a mother of 5 who recently was hospitalized for over 2 weeks with paralyzation on her left side. Baruch Hashem, she
in your hospital?
No. This is in Jersey. Oh. She's from Muncie area, and she Baruch Hashem came home. And with physical therapy and stuff like that, she's on her way to recovery, but she still needs her tefillot and limud Torah. So, B'ezrat Hashem, this year is l'refuat shlema Mazal Bat Liza. Also, l'havd ben Chaim l'Chaim. We're also learning Nishmat, my grandmother who passed away almost a year now ago. Erev Purim, Tanit Esther. Rachel Bat Rivka, Nisham Shehav Aliyah, Go B'Chayil Chayil, Ben Gan Eden. Okay, I will tell you, last week after Shachrit, I got a question posed to me by one of the youngsters in the shul. Youngster is nice, or young, but older guy, but not, he's not married yet. Young, nice guy, and he says to me, Rabbi, before we take out the Torah, we're still saying the 3 perakim of Tehillim that we started to sing on October 7th, right? When the war started, right? So we wanted to increase our tefillot. So we started saying the 3 perakim and Tehillim. At this time, we opened the Torah, opened the Aron, et Ratzon, so we wanted to read those perakim at that time. So he was telling to me, why are we still reading it? The war is over.
Except for Shabbat, right?
What?
Except for Shabbat.
No, we were reading the Tehillim on Shabbat during the time we opened the Torah.
Everybody stopped.
So he asked me why I didn't stop.
Yeah.
So I told him why we were reading the Tehillim. He says we're reading it for the hostages. So I said we still have one hostage there, number 1. All right, and we still one hostage left. So what? There's still a body that needs Kforas Yisrael, needs a Jewish burial.
They're holding him?
Yeah, they're holding him. They're not giving. They say they can't find him. That's what they're saying. So there's still one there. In addition, I said, I don't know about you, but whatever was before October 7th, right, is no longer here. Meaning there's a certain matzav now in Klal Yisrael where anti-Semites are walking around with, power to walk around and say the things they want to say and do the things they want to do. And there's terror attacks on Jews, all over the world. And so there was a big change. And I told him, in my opinion, I think the war is still going on. Maybe not the physical bloodshed war, where people are going and fighting as soldiers in Gaza, but I think on a global level, we are fighting anti-Semitism. And I don't think we've gone back to the time where at least there was somewhat of a normalcy. Which gets me into this week's topic. There's a famous Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, in his Sichos Musar. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz tells us, the Midrash tells us that when they were bringing Yaakov Avinu to the Ma'arat HaMachpelah, they're burying Yaakov Avinu. We all know, famously, we were all taught when we were little, that Esav came to stop the procession. Esav came and said, that place is my place. I'm the Bechor. It belongs to me, the burial spot in the Ma'arat Machpelah. So, what happens? They start arguing back and forth. So, to get the shtar, to get the contract that they sold the Bechor, and it belongs to Yaakov, who did they send?
Naphtali.
They send Naphtali. Naphtali is the fastest Shevet, and they send Naphtali. Meanwhile, he's the Flash, okay? Not Barry Allen, but he's the Flash, okay? So Naphtali goes. Meanwhile, there is a man named Hushim, right? Hushim, he is deaf. He is the son of Dan. Hushim ben Dan. He says, what's going on here? He didn't hear the whole thing back and forth. So they tell Hushim, well, this guy over here, your father's uncle, right? Your great uncle, Esav, he's not letting them go into Ma'arat Machpelah to bury them. So what does Hushim do? He says, this is the problem. He comes over, he knocks off the head of Esav, and that's it. Now they continue the procession, they continue the levaya, and they bury Yaakov Avinu. Yehuda was stronger than Hushim. Why didn't he kill Esav? What was so unique about Hushim? Why he's the only one that said, you know what, go here and kill this guy?
Psychological barrier. It's because this guy didn't hear anything. If he heard it, he would...
So Rabbi Gabriel is Mechadish what Chaim Shmulevitz says. He says what happens is as follows. You see, people gradually accustom themselves to the situation that they are in. Sometimes when you come to a certain place, the first time you come there, you're all baffled. Oh my gosh, how can they do this? How can they do like this? And then, after going back a few times, you've already become rogil. You got used to this. And it's easy for you to digest it. Because you've gone and seen it and been there and done it, even though it makes no sense. Lahavdil, I'll just bring a mashal. There's a story written by the famous author, Mark Twain, whose real name was Samuel Clemens. Okay, Samuel Clemens has a book called The Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. And basically it's a civilized American from the early 19th century, and he gets knocked on the head and he ends up in King Arthur's court. Okay? That's the story.
Wi-Fi story.
Right? And when he gets back there, like the first day he's there, this is the way Mark Twain writes the story. The first day he's there, he sees they're about to kill somebody for something that the king didn't like the way the guy's nose looked, something like that. So he says, no, king, don't kill him. It's not worth it. And as the story goes on, even this guy, the American from later on in the future, it now gets used to killing people for no reason. Someone once played a band of bad music, and he says, kill them. He himself says it. He becomes the advisor of the king. And what happened? Originally, he was all upset because when you're around something for a long time, you get used to something. Says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, I'll let you say it in a second. Chaim Shmulevitz says, everybody was there, they heard about Esav, he was stopping, they got used to it. They got used to the fact that it's not going to happen now. Hushim, who didn't hear it, that was for him the first time. He said, what? What busha, my father's going to, my grandfather's going to wait for the son to that, and he took care of the situation. Gabriel, you wanted to say?
When I was interpreting this hospital, for Russian patients, first time I come, patients are yelling, screaming in pain.
You were like,
you feel, I'm pain. How can I help you?
Right.
And after a while, what's your response by?
Right. You're touching on a good point, but it's what's called burnout in the workplace. We call that burnout, or fatigue. For example, the first time that I started working in the hospital, every alarm, I was like, who, where, what, when, what? Right. Now, all the alarms go off, I just continue, I ignore everything, right? Because it's called alarm fatigue. I got used to that, okay? You become ragil in that. So says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, a very important factor when serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not to get used to certain situations. He says, there are certain people, they look around and they see pictures of Israeli soldiers, Jewish soldiers, standing and taking a picture in talis and tefillin in front of the tank. Says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz that, maybe that's not the best sight. Bnei Yaakov, Bnei Yisrael, supposed to be sitting in the base medrash, not necessarily, fighting. You have to. I'm not saying you're not supposed to fight in the army. That's not my point here. My point is, why did that become ragil? That becomes something that we got used to. And we think that it's okay and stuff like that. Today, let's go back. 100 years ago, you would ask somebody, from Jew, you would ask a religious Jew, where would you, this time they're all living in the diaspora, they're all living in Chutz La'aretz. And you ask them, where does your heart want to be? Where do you want to go? Everyone wants to go to Eretz Yisrael. Walk around today to young kids and tell them, where do you want to go? They want to go to Aruba, they want to go to Jamaica, they want to go to Panama, they want to go to Mexico, they want to go to all these nice vacation resorts, Greece, Dubai. We couldn't have a share with that anyway, Dubai. So everybody wants to go to all these places. What happened to our we got used to having Eretz Yisrael next to us. We have tickets, we can get on El Al, we're there in 12 hours, we can fly right back. We lost that sense of connection, of yearning, of prioritizing.
Is it Sionim?
No, it's the fact that we become complacent to the fact that we have an Eretz Yisrael that we were able to get there so fast. And we treat it like our backyard, right? We've lost that spiritual, high, that connection that we want to be there. So Rav Chaim Shmulevitz says, when serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we have to be careful not to become ragil in the situation that we're in. So my answer to this young man who said, why do we continue to say the Prokim of Tehillim? I said, you think you got used to the new situation. The anti-Semites are everywhere, and the Sonim Yisrael are taking over, right? You got used to the situation. You think there's no more war. Everything is back to normal. And I tell you, I don't see it that way. I'm seeing there's still a major situation. And therefore, I continue to say the Prokim of Tehillim because I believe the Matzah of Yisrael is still at a very sakana and dangerous level. And therefore, we continue to say the Prokim of Tehillim. Now, while we are already thinking, right, and we're thinking about the fact that we can't get situated to our situation, let's think a little bit more. Number one, Rav Chaim Shmulevitz tells us there's a Gemara in Bava Basra, and the Gemara tells us about the Harugei Lud. There was a Jewish community in Lud, and the king accused them of killing a non-Jewish child. And he said, if the people who did it don't come forward, I will kill out the entire city of Jews.
Blood libel.
Pretty much, one of your early blood libels. And what happened? Two Jews who were totally innocent, nothing to do with this thing, came forward and said they did it. And they were killed. And this way they saved the entire Jewish community. The Gemara says about these two people, Ein kol bria yachol la'amod b'mechitzasan. No creature can approach their lofty spot in olam haba. And says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, V'chein ani oimer al eila shemosrim nafsham ba'avor hatzalotan. I say the same thing about those who fight for Klal Yisrael to keep the Jewish people alive and safe. Says Marish Yeshiva Rabbi Yisrael Reisman that what he was saying was that every soldier who puts his life on the line for Klal Yisrael, his place in Olam Haba cannot be compared to anyone else.
Sounds like Zionism.
It does, right? But this is what Rav Chaim Shmulevitz and Rabbi Yisrael Reisman, and I think it's a very important idea. They used to say, Rav Chaim Ovadia used to see a soldier, he used to kiss him. This is our people. Their place in Olam Haba for protecting Klal Yisrael. There's nothing like it. Another idea we'll try to think about is that we know that when Paro was making his counsel, we're going to see in next week's Parsha, of how to deal with the Jewish problem, right? The problem that still remains till today, right? And everyone's always looking for the final solution. Well, Paro's final solution from Bil'am was to drown all the baby boys, right? Hashem promised no more Mabul, so he drowned them. There was another guy there. There was two more people there. Who else was there? Yitro. Yitro said no and ran away. And there was the other one? Eov. Good old Job, right? He was there. And Eov did what?
Silent.
He sat silent. He didn't say anything. He said, I don't agree to kill the Jews, but to say no,
You're gonna get slapped.
I'm going to get in trouble. I'm not going to benefit me anything. So, what happened? Eov kept quiet. And later on, we know what happened to Job. What happened?
Satan came to
He was in a lot of pain. Satan came to test him. He was in a lot of pain. His skin was melting off his body. He lost all his children, whether it was only in his dream or actually happened. Fine. And the question is, why did Eov have to get all this? And some want to say, Rav Chaim Shmulevitz says, it's a midah keneged midah. Why? What was the connection? What did Eov say? What's the point to say something? Nothing's going to happen. When a person is in a lot of pain, what does he do?
He's quenching.
Kvetches. Oi, ai, e, ooh, ah. This u-i-a-u-a, it helps with the pain?
Sometimes.
Not really. Does it take your pain away? Does it help your pain go away? No. So you said, if I say something, it's not going to help anything, and you kept quiet. And here you're now having pain, and what are you doing? You're saying something that's not helping it going away. Says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, whenever you're in any situation, and it's a bad situation, whether you can do something or not about it, that's not the question. If you do something, you do something. But even if you can't do something, at least you have to talk about it. Talk about it either b'tefillah, saying Tehillim, learning Torah and the Zechut. That's what you can do about it. You can bring awareness to the situation. You have to do something. You can't just stick back and say, listen, who am I? I'm an American boy. I'm living in the U.S. That's going on in Gaza and Israel. That's not me. I'm not. No. That's not the way to think about it. One last idea while we're thinking. We'll think about Esther Hamalka, Queen Esther. Esther Hamalka, we know that when she finds out about the Gezeras Haman, and then Haman wants to destroy all the Jewish people, she says to Mordechai, tell all the Klal Yisrael, Tzumu olai sheloshet yamim. Have everybody fast for 3 days. Those 3 days included what days?
Was it
Pesach. The Seder nights. Yeah, it was on Pesach. And Esther Malka said, don't have Seder. Instead, have a fast. Now we know, the Rambam writes, that we're not allowed to fast on Shabbat and Yom Tov. So how could Esther say to fast? They didn't have Simchat Yom Tov, they didn't eat the matzah. Says Rav Chaim, Tefillah, a prayer from the depth of the heart, is considered a natural force. So where the Rambam says you can't fast for a segula, you can't use fasting as a segula to help you, but praying through fasting and stuff like that, that's not a segula, but rather that's definitely going to work. Says the Rosh Yeshiva, a Reisman, he says, today I don't know if fasting is going to help. The truth is, most people have a very difficult time fasting. We're such a food weaklings, but we're also a very foodie people, right? We just eat to eat, stam to eat, like there's no reason to eat, we'll just eat, right? That's why everybody's overweight and obese. It's just because we eat, and eat. Well, Baruch Hashem, we're in America, and there's a lot of food, so we continue to eat. And therefore, it's very hard for us to fast. We're weak in this, we get not angry, but hangry, right? And stuff like that. So, what should we do? Says Rav Reisman, in situations where Klal Yisrael needs us, what are we supposed to do? We have to do some sort of fast. Sumolize some sort of fast. What is fasting? Fasting is staying away from food. If you can't stay away from food, what can you stay away from? Maybe you don't have to have that ice cream. Maybe you don't have to have that extra dessert or extra entertainment, or go away for both Hanukkah and winter vacation and Pesach and Truas and all these other things. Maybe you can tzumu'alai a little bit. Maybe you can have somewhat of a restraint and use that restraint to remember Klal Yisrael's pain and know that will help with helping Klal Yisrael. Rav Pam says, you also have to remember one other idea. We know that when the frogs, Tzefardea, the plague of the frogs were in Mitzrayim, what do? They try to stop the frogs. What do? They hit the frog. What happened? The frog split and got more and more and more. Says Rav Pam, this is when in the early 2000s, through the year 2000, year before that, there was a lot of, if you remember in Eretz Yisrael at that time, there was a lot of suicide bombings going on the buses. You remember? Every other day there was another bus that blew up. And Rav Pam says that if you stop one terrorist, all what you did was created another 2. You stopped 2 terrorists, you created another 4. Right? They have a practice in Israel, so I'm not getting into politics, but that's their practice. If somebody is a terrorist, right? They go and they demolish his house and his family's house, right? To curb terrorist participation. But what happens a lot of times? The family members get more upset, and they all become terrorists more and more. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying that that's what happens. And Rav Pam says that's the truth. You think you stop one terrorist, you just open two more. You stop one, more and more will come out. What did Paro do after he realized that the frogs keep coming and coming and coming? After Paro said this, there's no stop. So what did Paro say? He summoned Moshe. He told Moshe what? How? Pray to God. Says Rav Pam, that's the only way that these things are going to stop. Via our prayer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You have to pray. You have to pray about these things. The other day we were here, and one of our mispalim, Rav Yitzchak Bonan, says, I can't believe people daven for 3 minutes. He thinks it's only here. We try to explain to him that in other places it's 2 minutes. All right? And in some places it's 1 minute. I can take you to places where they daven so fast. But he has a very important point. Tefillah is our talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We can make and break, start and end everything in our lives via what? Via tefillah. Paroi realized you keep hitting the frog, it's going to keep going. The only way to stop it is tefillah. Our jobs is also to realize that, to understand that, to think that. Again, you need the soldiers, and the soldiers are Kodesh Kodashim, and you have to respect them. They have no one has makom like them in Olam Haba. And you need to understand that we're in a situation that requires help. You have to understand we have to do something. We have to. But you have to understand that tefillah is the most important part. Our prayer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'charbi v'kashti, right? As Yaakov Avinu says, with my prayers and with my sword and my bow, right? This is how we conquer. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us that ability that when we see in Et Tzara Yaakov, we realize the tools that we have at hand of how we as Jews can accomplish our goals. Okay, we'll tell you. Let's move into the halachic portion of tonight's class, which, based on the psukim in this parsha, we have a pasuk that says as follows: "V'yikrivu yimei Yisrael lamut." Right. So Yisrael's days of death approach. This is Yaakov Avinu. Vayikra livno Yosef, and he called to his son Yosef. Vayomer lo, and he tells him, Imna matzati chen b'einecha. Right, if I have found favor in your eyes, sim na yadecha tachat yerechi. Place your hand under my thigh. Ve'asita imadi chesed ve'emet, and do for me a kindness and truth. Al na tikbereni b'mitzrayim. Don't bury me in Mitzrayim. Right? And Rashi brings down various reasons why he didn't want to be buried in Mitzrayim. Someone give me some of the reasons why he didn't want to be buried in Mitzrayim. Alright? The lice didn't make it to Avodah Zarah, and he didn't want to go through the tunnels. So Yaakov Avinu, during Yemot HaMashiach, right, he's going to have to roll around in the tunnels. He didn't want to roll around.
So this Hamorim digging tunnels?
for us to use. So Yaakov Avinu said, I'll not take Bereni Mitzrayim. We also know that Yosef and all the Shvatim also were all taken out to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. Pakopakadati. Right? Take me out, remember? And take out Yosef's bones and all the bones. We're on site that says everybody's bones were taken out. So the question is, first of all, Moshe Rabbeinu also was crying about that he's not going to even get kfuras in Eretz Yisrael. He wanted at least his bones to go in. He didn't. They stayed across where the Balpar incident happened. So the question in Halacha is as follows. We see that Yaakov, that Yosef, Moshe Rabbeinu, the Shvatim, they all wanted to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. Is that the proper thing to do?
for 40 years carried bones.
Yeah.
It's normal.
And Yehuda's bones were shaking. The Gemara inside. Yeah. So hold on. So the question is as follows: do you have to be buried in Eretz Yisrael?
You have to.
Do you have to be buried in Eretz Yisrael? Is it better to be buried in Eretz Yisrael? Do you have to spend all your money to be buried or bury someone in Eretz Yisrael? Is it better to be buried somewhere where your family can come and visit and daven and say tefillos? If my money could be used better for Torah institutions and stuff like that, do I have to? Can I keep the body here rather than going to Eretz Yisrael? So let's delve into some of the ideas here, Rabotai, about being buried in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, the Gemara in Ketuvot, Adav Kuf Yud Aleph. The Gemara tells us that anybody who is buried in Eretz Yisrael, anyone's buried in Eretz Yisrael, it's as if he's buried under the Mizbeach. And it brings him kapara. Okay? In fact, the Rambam in Hilchos Melachim 5:11 says, the one who is buried in Eretz Yisrael, all his averot are mechaper. The Rambam writes, the Rambam says that anybody who's buried in Eretz Yisrael, all the averot are wiped off.
If you didn't live there, why would you be?
Okay, hold on. You're talking like Yerushalmi in Klayim. Hold on a second. The Zohar. Hold on. Okay, so the Gemara in Ketuvot also goes as far as saying that Techiyat HaMeitim will only happen for those who are buried in Eretz Yisrael. Right? The Gemara says, what do you mean? Tzaddikim outside Yisrael won't come back? The Gemara says, no. Everyone who's buried in Eretz Yisrael, including Yeravam ben Nevat, will come back. Yeah. But those buried outside of Eretz Yisrael, only the tzaddikim will come back.
We'll stay here.
In fact, the Gemara says that Yaakov Avinu requested to be buried in Eretz Yisrael because he was unsure whether he would be merited to return through these tunnels or he'd have to come back in a more painful manner. Okay, so the Gemara in Ketuvot makes it out as if it is a very, very special thing. The Rambam says it's mechaper all yavirot. The Rambam does say that it's far better to move to Eretz Yisrael while alive, okay, rather than being buried there after death. But we have from all these sources, from the stories of the Torah through the Gemara and the Rambam, it seems clear that being buried in Eretz Yisrael is worthwhile and a praiseworthy practice, at least for those who can afford it. Okay? That's what we see up until now. Now, what about the other side of the story? Okay, so this is the Gemara, Yerushalmi, Talmud Yerushalmi, in Kilayim, in the 9th parak, Halacha Gimel, the last few lines before Halacha Dalet. Okay? There is a rabbi there. His name is Rabbi Bar Kiryah. He was with Rabbi Eliezer. And they saw coffins arriving from Chutz La'aretz into Eretz Yisrael. And they remarked, those who rejected living in Eretz Yisrael during their lifetimes are now coming and making our land impure. So their comments would imply that it would have been better for those individuals to be buried where they lived, right? Outside the land of Eretz Yisrael. Additionally, the Zohar, in a few places, including Vayechi, writes that a typical Jew should not be buried in Eretz Yisrael. And Yaakov Avinu was an exception because the Shekhinah was very close to him. So for him, it was better to come to Eretz Yisrael. But for most people, they're not Yaakov Yosef, they're not Moshe Rabbeinu, and they should be buried where they lived. The Sefer Chasidim, what?
Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't buried there.
He wasn't, but he wanted to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. The Sefer Chasidim says that it's actually a great benefit for families and relatives to come and daven on his behalf, coming to his gravesite. And burial in Eretz Yisrael makes regular visits for those far away difficult, if not impossible. And one can possibly argue, based on this, that it's probably better to be buried where the family is, where everyone is. So these are the stuff, and these are really the early sources about this. So let's take a look a little bit at the poskim, and then we'll look inside the Yalkut Yosef to see how he brings down these halachot, and then we'll talk about some other questions that are related to this. Okay, so one of the earlier poskim of last century, Rav Yosef Eliyahu Henkin, was against people being buried in Eretz Yisrael. And his rationale was, it's a great financial cost. And he considered it much more meaningful to use that money to support Torah or needy families. And it's really wasting a lot of money to bring them to Eretz Yisrael. That was his opinion. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zecher Tzadik L'Bracha, also believed burial in Eretz Yisrael to be unnecessary. Especially because being buried to family, you would be having them coming and visiting, which is a good thing. So you had Rav Yaakov and you had Rav Yosef Henkin, who both said that should not be buried. So you should stay here. On the other hand, Rav Shmuel Vosner in the Shevet HaLevi writes that even if one doesn't receive kapara, even if you don't get kapara, Rambam says you get kapara if you're buried in Eretz Yisrael, he still saves himself from the pain of having to roll for the sake of Tchiyat HaMeitim, and a person should, if they can, be buried in Eretz Yisrael. Eliezer Waldenberg in his Tzitz Eliezer writes that we certainly paskin like the Bavli versus the Yerushalmi and the Zohar, and that therefore it is praiseworthy to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so we have Malchoket Poskim now of what to do. So for us, let's look in the Yalkut Yosef as we try to follow the Yalkut Yosef as much as possible. So let's take a look what he says over here. Misha niftar bechutz la'aretz, someone who is niftar in chutz la'aretz, mitzvah rabba lahaloto likfura be'eretz Yisrael. It's a huge mitzvah to get him to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. Mishum shene'emar v'chiper admato imam, right? V'chein ikar ledina b'chol ofen. In every situation, this is the ikar din. Get him to Eretz Yisrael. Ve'ein choshishin l'chumas hazayir HaKadosh Bazeh. And we're not worried about what the Zohar says, that if you come, you're being mitama. We're not worried about that. Im loisha, as long as he wasn't, he didn't make a tzava, mefureshes, shelo l'halatol haaretz. If the guy who died left a will that says, don't take me to Israel, other than that, you always take him. Sha'az yesh l'kayim divrei hatzava. If his tzava said, don't take me to Eretz Yisrael, then you don't take him to Eretz Yisrael. But other than that, Yalkut Yosef says, it is a mitzvah rabba, the ikar adin b'chol ofen, take him to Eretz Yisrael. Here's another halacha he brings down. Mitzvah gadol al haben, lishtadel me'od, lahavi et horav sheniftaro b'chutz la'aretz, l'kvura be'eretz Yisrael. So the children should do everything they can to get their parents to Eretz Yisrael to be buried. Shekol ha'kaver Eretz Yisrael ki l'kvar tachas ha'mizbeach. Shenemer v'chipar adot ha'amo. Ve'ein tzarich lamtin zman ma kedei lehavil Eretz Yisrael. You shouldn't waste time. El nachon la'asod kein miyad. V'zarez bazeh. You should do it right away. Don't waste time. And even though you're not going to be able to visit them, right? You're not going to be able to go visit the grave sites because you're in Chutz La'aretz. Afal pikein yikram ba'aretz shezu zechut u'ma'ala gedolah l'niftarim. It is a huge zechut for the niftar to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. So comes out in the Yalkut Yosef, he wants us to bury people that we need to bury in Eretz Yisrael, and not bury here as much as possible. That person should mitzvah rabbah and don't waste time and do it as much as you can. Put everything into it. Now, let's look at another side of this, which is, let's say someone already passed away, and someone already was buried in Chutz La'aretz. Should we transfer them now to Eretz Yisrael?
This big tzaddikim buried here. Nobody's burying.
So the din in Shulchan Aruch, you're really not supposed to exhume the grave and take out the body or touch it. And the Shulchan Aruch does say, unless you're moving them to Eretz Yisrael, then you can take them out. Right? The Aruch says, you're taking them out to Eretz Yisrael. It's a big kapara for them. It's a big schos to be buried in Eretz Yisrael, so you can exhume them and take them and bring them to Eretz Yisrael. Now, there was the Kleisenberger Rebbe in his Divrei Yatziv was asked about moving the body of one of the great Rebbes, Rav Hirsch of Rimanov, to Eretz Yisrael. And the Kleisenberger Rebbe said that the practice of the Baal Shem Tov's Talmidim was to remain in Chutz La'aretz. And the Kleisenberger Rebbe said perhaps they were worried about what the Zohar says, that people did not live in Eretz Yisrael should not be buried in Eretz Yisrael. So you have from some poskim by the Hasidic world that if you're buried in Chutz La'aretz, stay in Chutz La'aretz. Interesting enough, there was the Karlin Stolen Rebbe, Rav Yochanan Perlau, who was buried in New York. When several of his family members wanted to move his body to Eretz Yisrael, some Rebbeim in the United States signed a letter permitting his body to be moved. Some said they had reservations. They were worried that if they started this, right, then it'll become a trend that everybody will want to get their Gedolim and their Rebbeim and the Rabbanim and the Rosh Yeshivas, as it cost a lot of money to move everybody to Eretz Yisrael, right? So they were worried about that. The question was sent at that time to Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, who ruled that he certainly should be moved, and indeed, the Karlin Stolen Rebbe was buried in Tiberia. He was exhumed from New York and taken to Tiberia. So here we're going to read, now in the Yalkut Yosef, outside of this for a second. Gan tzadikim shniftu v'nikru b'chutz la'aretz, mitzvah rava lifnois at atzmateim mikevram v'halotam l'eretz Yisrael. It's a mitzvah to take out the Gedolim who are buried in Chutz La'aretz and to bring them to Eretz Yisrael. And they should be buried in Har Zeisim Yerushalayim. And they should only be done under people who Yerei Shemayim. And they should ask Mechila from the bones that they're touching them. So he writes over here that it is a mitzvah to take tzaddikim out of Chutz La'aretz and to bring them and bury them in Eretz Yisrael.
What about a gadol like Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky?
So he was, I believe his tzava, right? So then I would assume his tzava was to stay here. So then you don't take him over.
What it says explicitly?
I'm not sure if that was his actual
It
tzava.
said only if it says it explicitly in its tzava.
I think he wanted to stay. I think people can assume that was his thing. Actually, an interesting case of Rav Moshe, when Rav Moshe's son-in-law, Rav Shuskal, right? When he passed away young. And Rav Moshe also, by the road, was not in favor of moving to take the body to Eretz Yisrael. He was not. And he asked the question, I'm going to see in a moment. And he was masupik what to do with his son-in-law. In the end, he said, take him to Eretz Yisrael. And because he said that, when Rav Moshe was lifted, Rav Moshe said, take my son-in-law to Eretz Yisrael. So he also wanted to be Eretz Yisrael, and they took Rav Moshe to Eretz Yisrael. Now, where was the question that came to Rav Moshe where those who want to say he wasn't so forward to going to Eretz Yisrael? Okay, so there was a historical figure. His name was Sir Moses Montefiore. Okay? Sir Moses Montefiore was a religious Jew. He was actually a Sephardic Jew of Spanish descent who was born in Livorno, Italy, but his parents were actually living in London, but they were traveling. Sir Moses Montefiore became one of the richest people of the time. Sir Moses Montefiore helped the initial Yishuv in Eretz Yisrael, gave them money, gave them support, gave them education. After the earthquake in Tzfas and Tiberia, he helped them out. Sir Moses Montefiore was made a knight by the queen, and later he was also made a baron. Okay, he also had connections with the famous Judah Turo, right? You know, Turo University, Turo College is named after Judah Turo. Turo was also a Spanish Jew who ended up living in Rhode Island. And when Turo passed away, he had a lot of money, and he put in his will that Sir Moses Montefiore should be the one to allocate the funds. And Sir Moses Montefiore used those money to help the Jews in Eretz Yisrael. Sir Moses Montefiore also was very involved with the Jewish communities all around the world. He went to Damascus himself when there was a blood libel, and they wanted to punish the Jewish community there. He went there himself, and he represented the Jewish people, and he asked for this, for that, until they freed everybody there. When the Russian Tsarist government started going after the Jews, they invited Sir Moses Montefiore to come, and they complained to him about the Jewish education. and how it's ruining their country. And Sir Moses Montefiore said, give me a few weeks. He went traveling Russia throughout the Jewish communities. And by the way, at that time, the majority of the Jewish world lived in Russia. And he wrote like books and books, sending it back to the Russian government, how he found no problem with the Jewish education, right? And as a businessman, the problem was other issues in Russia. And the Tsar's government kind of let go and stopped bothering the Jews for that time. So very much he was involved with Jewish communities and everything. He is buried in Kent. Okay? Kent is a place in England. It was a land that he actually bought off the royal queen. She was, I guess, needed money, and they sold a part of their estate, and he bought it. He made a shul there, a small beis medrash, and he ended up being buried in that property. At one point, the Israeli government decided they want to bring this guy, who was so instrumental to the initial Yishuv in Eretz Yisrael, they wanted to bring him back to Israel. They wanted to rebury him there. And they brought this Sheila to Rav Moshe. Or the question was brought to Rav Moshe. And Rav Moshe said, no, you cannot bring Sir Moses Montefiore to Eretz Yisrael from Kent, where he's buried. He said, why? He said, first of all, when the Shulchan Aruch said you can move someone's remains from where they are to Eretz Yisrael, that's if the family decides to do it. Not if the government decides to do it. The family wants to do it, that's okay. Secondly, he says that if you're going to start moving Sir Moses Montefiore, then people are going to want to, this one and that one and that one, and everyone was going to want to come, right? Similar like we saw before. And then Rabbi Moshe said, Sir Moses Montefiore had tons of money. If he wanted to be buried in Eretz Yisrael, he would have arranged for it. You know, the last time he went to Eretz Yisrael, Palestine at the time, he went there 7 times. And in his days, there weren't planes and stuff like that. The last time he went there, and he was 91 years old. And he traveled months, whatever it was, to get there. So, said Rav Moshe, if Sir Moses Montefiore wanted to be buried in Eretz Yisrael, he would have arranged it. And since he didn't arrange it, he doesn't want to be buried there. So, not to move him. Rav Avadia got involved in this question. And Rav Avadia said, first of all, why are you differentiating? It's Shuvah back to Rav Moshe. Why are you differentiating between family and the government? L'maisa, it's a schut to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. So whoever can do it, whoever initiates it, great. Why is there a difference? Anyone who wants to perform a kindness for someone after passing and spare him the pain of traveling to Eretz Yisrael with Chiyas HaMesim should do so. Furthermore, said Rav Avadia, this does not diminish the honor of the Gedolim and Tzaddikim buried outside of Eretz Yisrael. One has the right to help him wherever he chooses without needing to consider all those that he is not helping. Finally, even though Montefiore himself chose to be buried in Chutz La'aretz, now that he's in the Olam Ames, he definitely wants to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. All right? Now that he's in the Olam Ames, now he wants to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. So Rav Avadia was of the opinion that you couldn't move Sir Moses Montefiore. Sir Moses Montefiore was never moved in the end. He's still in Kent. He was buried there, and in his estate over there. He's still there. He was never brought. But there was somebody who was brought to Eretz Yisrael from Livorno. Who was this? This was the Chida. The Chida, the giant of the man, wrote so many svarim. Not even all of them are being have been published. His phenomenal memory. Actually, recently, did you know he actually was able to write in our script in Latin, English type of letters? They have a check that he wrote in Italy using Latin letters, our letters. And he writes very beautifully. He's not like no mishkabobbles. Everything is there was on one of the Ami magazines or one of the AIM magazines, whatever it was. It was there. I saw a check there. Chaim David Azulai, he signed with the English letters. So he was on fundraising missions many, many times. And he ended up becoming the Rav in Livorno, and he was buried there. And at one point, the Jewish community in Eretz Yisrael and those in Livorno wanted to send his body up to Eretz Yisrael. This was what, like year 1970, I think it was, 1960. 60s, 1970s. And the Chida was brought back to Eretz Yisrael. And his body was taken from Livorno, was brought to the main shul in Rome. And then it was brought to Eretz Yisrael. And the person most involved with his reburial was Rabbi Harav Mordechai Elio Zechet Tzadik Lebracha. Right, and there's that famous story, right, that happened at that time when the Chida came back, and they brought him out in the coffin that he was. There was two boxes, one inside the other. And Mordechai opened it, right, to make sure what was going on, and he saw that the box, there's a big coffin, and inside the big coffin was a small little box. So he said to those who brought them, what's a small little box? He said, we collected all the bones, and we put it in the small box. And Mordechai says, I thought I'm going to have a full intact bone over here, all the bones in place. We can't have it like this. And the story goes that he was traveling with one of the Abuchatzeras, and they stopped over. He went to the mikvah. He went and he bought tons of screwdrivers, and he unscrewed. He didn't know which size the screws were, but he unscrewed that small box. And as he was unscrewing it, the box was shaking. You heard the story? The box was shaking. And everyone got scared. It was about to faint. And Rav Mordechai was talking to the bones, saying, Chida, this is what you wrote in your sefer of how to do the things. I'm doing what you wrote. Please, don't shake or don't calm down. That's the way the story's brought. And the bones relaxed, and he continued doing it. And then again, it started a couple of times. He had to do this, and finally he opened the whole box. He closed the coffin, and he said to the bones, reassemble. That's the way the story goes. And people heard the noises inside the box as the bones reassembled inside the box to be a full body, into the shape of the body where the bones are supposed to be. And then they reburied the Chida like that. So a little spooky story, but Maisa, that's what's brought down in the Svarim, the stories that happened at that time. So that's a little bit on the reburial and being buried in Eretz Yisrael. So comes out Lamaisa, it is a very, very special inyan, and a person can do it. They should try very hard to do that. Okay, let's move on to our last topic. So that was the halachic portion. Let's move on to another very interesting topic. This one's coming from the Einei Yisrael. This is Rabelsky's Sefer on Chumash. And it comes to this idea over here, Rabotai. We have in this week's Parsha where Yaakov Avinu is giving blessings, so to speak, berachot, to his children. And a lot of the beginning ones don't seem to be much of berachot. He's actually giving them a lot of musar. And one of them that we have is about Shimon veLevi. The pasuk says, and this is in 49. Pasuk, hey, over here, let's take a look. Just want to have it open with us so I can read it for you. Here we go, Rabotai. Okay. Shimon veLevi Achim Kelei Hamas Mecherotehem. They have stolen tools. Whose tools did they steal? Esav's tools. Esav is the one who lives by the sword. And they took the sword and they killed out the city of Shechem. Okay? In Pasuk Zayin, what does he say? Achalekem beYaakov v'afitzem beYisrael. He says, I will divide them in Jacob, and I will disperse them in Klal Yisrael. And Rashi explains, Levi doesn't get any nachala. Levi gets cities all around the country. He's never going to be in one spot. Shimon, even though, Rashi doesn't say this part, even though he gets his nachala, it's actually, his portion is within Yehuda. But says Rashi, what happened with Shevet Shimon? Listen to Rashi. Ela mishimon, kedei sheyu nefotzim, in order for them to be scattered, ein lecha aniyim v'sofrim u'malamedei tinakot. Ela mishimon. Shimon's tribe became milamedim. They became rabbis, teachers, rebbes. And they would have to go all around the country, like they used to be, milamedim used to be, go all around the country. And this way they would be dispersed. So Shevet Levi, later on we know Moshe Rabbeinu says that what about them? Yaru mishpatech el Yaakov v'toratech el Yisrael. They become Rashi Yeshivot. They become those who teach the adults. Shimon's tribe becomes teachers of young students. So Rav Belsky brings some Rav Yaakov in the Emes Yaakov. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky asks, 1 second. The whole problem with Shimon Levi is what? They're angry. They kill. Why are you making them teachers of Klal Yisrael? Shimon will be teachers of young children, and Levi will be teachers of the adults. That's what Yaakov gives them, a bracha. They're the ones who kill people. They're angry. Why would they get the bracha to become teachers? That's the Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky's question. It's brought down here by Rav Belsky. It's a good question, Rabotai. So listen to what Rav Belsky says. Rav Belsky says we have to go back to the Parsha of what happened with Shem. We know that Yaakov tells Shimon and Levi, what did you guys do? Everyone is now going to go against us. Right? That's what he says. They're going to come and destroy us. And what is the brothers' answer? Shimon and Levi answer? They're going to make our sister a zona. And Yaakov doesn't respond. Yaakov just told them off. What did you guys do? You're getting us all in trouble. Then they say, what? Our sister should be made a zona? And Yaakov doesn't answer. Says Rav Yaakov Netsky, let's go back a little bit more. The pasuk says, "V'Yaakov shema ki tameh Dinah bito." He heard that Dinah got violated, and what? V'achreish Yaakov, and Yaakov kept quiet until his sons came. Why Yaakov kept quiet? Then, right, Chamor comes. He's talking to Yaakov. Yaakov doesn't talk anything. The brothers come, and they start talking. And they're the ones who say, do Brit Milah, do this, do that. Why is that way? Says Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, that what? Yaakov's sons were not speaking in the place of Yaakov Avinu. On the contrary, they spoke Yaakov Avinu's words on his behalf. Yaakov Avinu told the brothers, the sons, you talk back. You trick them.
The custom, the brother spoke on behalf of the sister.
The Emet Yaakov says, Yaakov told them, you answer back. That's why he kept quiet. What did Yaakov want? Yaakov wanted his brothers, the children, his sons, to feel Dinah's pain and to take responsibility for it. From all of the brothers, there was only 2 brothers who took the mission to heart. Who? Shimon and Levi. The Shimon and Levi, says Emet Yaakov, took achrayut for what happened. Not only that, the Rambam says that what they did was right by killing out the city of Shechem. Why? There's a Shev Mitzvah B'nai Noach. One of the mitzvahs B'nai Noach is to set up courts. This way everyone would behave. And in Shechem, there was no courts. And that's why everyone was doing whatever they wanted. So they didn't do one of the mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Therefore, they were allowed to kill them. If they are ever one mitzvah B'nai Noach, you're allowed to kill them. That's the din. But Yaakov Avinu perhaps held like the Ramban. The Ramban, Nachmanides says, when's that true? That's only if it's a mitzvah. Lo ta'aseh. If they're not supposed to do something and they do it, that's when you're allowed to kill them. But a mitzvah aseh to make courts and they didn't do it, you can't kill them for that. Says Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. The problem here was what the brothers did, the extent of what they did. Yaakov Avinu felt they shouldn't have killed the people of Shem. But what did Yaakov Avinu like from what they did do? Is that they took responsibility. They were the only ones to take responsibility. They felt Dinah's pain. Says Rav Yaakov, you want to be a teacher? You want to be a Rebbe? The only way you can do that is if you take achrayut for Klal Yisrael. You take responsibility for those people. Sometimes people tell me, Rabbi, why are you so invested? Chill out, relax. How did you chill out, relax? You're responsible for a kahilo to whatever extent you have. You have to be involved in it. Full heart and soul. Achrayut, says Rav Belsky, even though they're killers, that will work on them. They're angry, we'll work on them. We'll calm them down. But the fact that they have achrayut, responsibility to do something about it, they felt the pain of their sister, that's what made them perfect to be teachers in Klal Yisrael. Shimon to be the teachers of young children, and Levi to be the teachers of the adults. You should know that every leader in Klal Yisrael, in the biblical times, most of them were what? Shepherds. Taking care of the sheep. Moshe Rabbeinu picked up the sheep, put it on his shoulder, brought him to the water. Brought him from the water to the water. They took care of sheep. Why? You have to have responsibility. You have to care before you can become a Moshe Rabbeinu. Before you can become a David HaMelech. Before you can become a Yaakov Avinu. You have to have that responsibility. I'll just mention a few ideas from Rav Belsky as he brought this one down. Rav Belsky would write, he actually would tell, so everyone knows that Rav Belsky was a Rosh Yeshiva, a huge Magen Shir, huge Talmud Chacham. He also was a Marad Asra of Camp Aguda. Anyone who had the schut to go to Camp Aguda or to even be there for the summer, you saw Rav Belsky in his element. Rav Belsky used to tell the counselors in the Aguda as follows. He said to the counselors, you hear this? Rav Gabriel, don't miss this. Rav Belsky used to tell the counselors, Moshe Rabbeinu prepared to be the leader of Klal Yisrael by serving as a shepherd for Yisro's sheep. Today, we don't have sheep. We're not shepherds. Who's sheep? Right?
We are the sheep, the students.
But serving as counselors and taking care of the neshamot of campers, you're preparing to be leaders of Klal Yisrael. So being a counselor is a big zechut.
More goes on.
Let me tell you something. People who have kids and in the summer, send them to camp, day camp, send them to be counselors. It's going to train them how to care for other people. And if the kids want to go to camp and enjoy as a camper, no problem. As long as they're older already, you can do half a summer in a camp, half a summer as a counselor. They get achrayut, responsibility of taking care of someone else. There's a true story that happened with Rav Belsky. The camp went to Niagara Falls. And one of the Bachrim was a handicapped boy. And when they got in there's different attractions there. And one of them, you needed to be able to walk. The fall is the main attraction at the falls is the Cave of the Winds. I was never there. You have to tell me. I have to go there one time with the kids. But he had to walk there. And his handicapped boy, they said he can't come in. So Rabelski said, everyone go ahead and I'll stay with him. Story goes that a few minutes later, a man comes with his son, and he takes his son and puts it on his shoulders, and he goes into this Cave of Winds.
Thinking that he's just taking a
So
ride.
Rabelski says to the guy there, if I put this handicapped kid on my shoulders, can I take him in? He says you could, but how are you going to put him on your shoulders? He's a heavy, he's an older boy. He's not like... Rabelski says, don't worry. If I can put him on my shoulders and walk with him, I can take him in? He says, yeah. Rabelski put this young man, a handicapped boy, on his shoulders and went through the whole Cave of Winds with him and kept him on there. How? Taking care of every sheep. Taking care of every person. They had stories where Rabelski would pick up people. One kid fainted on this trip. He picked him up with his own hands and brought him to where he had to get. Achrayut. Responsibility, not the American way. I don't see, I don't know,
They're gonna sue you. It
All right.
happened to me. I tried to help the guy, and they want to sue me for this.
You have to know who to help, when to help. But just end off, since this idea also, now, by the way, Rabelski was also from Shevet Levi. Rabelski was a Levi. So it fits very nicely into the whole idea. But Rabbi Yaakov was not a Levi. Rabbi Yaakov was not a Levi, but Rabbi Yaakov, the Rambam says anyone can be part of Shevet Levi. They sit and they want to learn Torah, they're all part of Shevet Levi. Rabbi Yaakov also had similar stories. Rabbi Yaakov, one of the famous stories of Rabbi Yaakov is Rabbi Yaakov. He once had to go on a certain trip. He had to go from one place to another. He had to take the 7:00 train. And when he gets to the train, he looks so sleepy. So his Talmud who's traveling with him said, Rabbi, what happened? He says, I was about to put on the alarm, and I remembered that my neighbor, who's a guy, he works the night shift, and he only comes home around 7. And if I would put on the alarm, he goes to sleep around 6:30, the alarm would wake him up too. So I didn't put on the alarm, so I stayed up all night not to miss the train. Worry about everybody else. What about us? We don't worry about anybody. We double park, triple park, fly through, don't care, this, that. What is? Shimon ben Levi teaches us achrayut. Yaakov Avinu made them teachers of Klal Yisrael. Why? Because they have achrayut. Responsibility means caring for the other people. When you're driving, you can let someone go in front of you. It's not going to be the end of the world. I promise you. Not going to end. Nothing going to end. If you go a little bit slower, it's okay. Also, look at this people who just nifter this week. This old man, some kid flew into him on Rockaway, I think it was, or on Broadway or something like that. And the guy died, 70-something years old, and healthy and everything. Yeah, Jewish kid, drove into a Jewish older man, gone. Car accident. A lot of car accidents happen because people are driving like Mr. Goyim. Let's take a chayut for all of Klal Yisrael. Let's drive normally. Let's be normal. Let's take a look at Ajah. Let's see what someone else needs. Let's help the other fellow. And Be'ezrat Hashem, if we do that, okay, we have minyan. כן? רבי חנן שלום ארץ הקדוש ברוך הוא זה כל ישראל. לפיכך יהיה בעולם תור מצוות שנאמר, אדוני חפץ למען